I feel like when I look at stuff, like especially the stuff that I do, I'm quite like a big critic on my own work. I don't really critique other people's stuff, but like when I look at mine, bro, I'm like quite harsh. So I was like, that's not good, or gotta fix that. Or
I think a lot of people could learn from that. Like, no, I'm serious.
yeah, it is actually.
Like a lot of people point the finger, but they don't point the finger back, you know. And it's
I think one of the things was like when I was younger. This was I think maybe when I was like maybe 14, 15 years old. I used to get like in a lot of trouble in school and all that crap, bro. And the discipline master, this guy, I actually really respected this guy. And one of the things was he was saying to me was like, oh, just everyone, like, when you point your fingers when you point at someone, you gotta remember like the other three fingers are pointing back at you, So like one thing is like when I point to people these days, I just point all like that way. I don't, it's like it's sort of like you just like point at that, but like you do that, you don't like do that kind of thing. I think that's like quite, when you point at someone like that, it's quite disrespectful, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. It's very aggressive.
Yeah, when you do that, and so like when you do that, I feel like it's just a bit more respectful, when you direct.
If we're gonna flesh that out, this is an open hand. To like be shaken, or it's a greeting. Whereas this is like almost a closed fist.
Yeah.
Like there is a difference in the body language.
Yeah, and he was always saying, the thing that he always preaches was like, when you start to blame somebody, or like when you pointing at someone, like you always got to look at yourself first. So I think I really took that with me when I grew up. But yeah, that was one of the very lasting.
That's a great teacher, man. Because that is a really important life lesson. I think a lot of the time we do blame other people for our situations or the bad things we experience or all our problems, when in fact we're probably at least 50% of it. A lot of the time. I mean, there are obviously exceptions to that.
And I think one of the things like why I could really relate with the guy was I felt that he had a very similar background to us. He came from like, he has this thing on it. I think back then it was like on Friendster or something, and it was like his education was like School of Hard Knocks, bro. And like, he I'm pretty sure he experienced like quite a rough like upbringing and all that, which shaped him to the person that he was. So when he was dealing with us, bro, although we were like the bad kids, the naughty kids and all that, like I noticed that he had a way to deal with us. Like he wouldn't deal with us with anger or with like, well, of course you get punished if you do stupid shit, but like he had a way around it. He talked to us like, he'd sit us down and he's like, tell me what's happening. Like, are you okay? It's all right. Why did you do that, man? Like,
Yeah.
He was very frank, and like he looked really fierce. He was like a big guy, he looked really fierce. But like when he sat down and talked to you, like I had a lot of respect for him, Although I was doing a lot of crap, like, that's just it. When you're younger, you engage, you get into fights, so this, that, whatnot. You do all sorts of mischievous stuff, but that's just growing up, right? That's what it is. But anyway, hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Ali Show, and today we have another very special guest, Mr. RIchie Hardcore.
Thanks for having me.
RIchie is a former professional fighter, a kickboxing coach, used to be on radio, and RIchie is also an advocate for anti-family abuse, sexual violence, drugs and alcohol, pornography, and you talk about a lot of this stuff. And you also currently have your own program/seminar, which is the Level Up coaching program. Whole lot of good stuff. We'll get into that. But yeah, anyway, before we start, RIchie, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Yeah, it's actually been a real positive start to the year. It's like complete opposite to last year, which like sucked.
Yeah, last year was like
yeah, I know. I had a whole bunch of like really difficult stuff inside the context of COVID happening. So this year's been good, man. I've been really enjoying being back in the gym with all the brothers and sisters, and lots of good work projects are happening. Yeah, my family life's good. So yeah, I'm a happy camper.
Bro. RIchie, I want to ask, like, it's pretty cool. Like, when I first heard your name, like, RIchie Hardcore, I kept thinking to myself, man, like, is this name actually hardcore? Like, man, could you tell us? And, well, I went on to do my research and found out, but, like, I don't want to say the story, but why did you, and when did you change your
name?
Yeah.
I think I changed my name when I was 26, which is a long time ago now. And I never thought, I always tell this
joke. Don't tell people your age.
Yeah, when I was 26, I thought it would just be funny, you know. But I actually used to do a radio show, and it was called Viva la Hardcore. Hardcore is actually a whole like subgenre style of music that came out of the punk rock scene. You know, and it continues to be a really important part of my life. So like the two things that I'm most passionate about are like Muay Thai, kickboxing, and fight sports, and in the hardcore music scene. And that's what I was all about as a teenager, right? And I used to do this radio show. And then I had a really aggressive style of fighting when I was young, and I'd go to the gym and play hardcore, and everyone just started calling me like, "Oh, you're RIchie Hardcore from that hardcore radio show," or "Hey man, like I seen you fighting, bro, hardcore, bro."
Hey, and then don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.
And then it just sort of became my nickname and my fight name. And you know how it is around the fight scene, you know, there's Rebel, or there's Psycho, or you know, there's Quake Riddell, or What's Up Quake. And so I was RIchie Hardcore, and then I thought it'd be funny. I just thought it'd be funny to change it legally. I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna change my name to RIchie Hardcore." I kept my last name. I still got my last name, but I changed so like Hardcore is my middle name. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool, bro. Like if you ask me, I think that's pretty cool, bro.
Yeah, people buzz out because it's on my passport. People see my license and they're like, "Yo, Hardcore is actually your name?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, it's on my university degree and everything."
You know what's funny is like, well, I grew up in an Asian community, and like I never used. Like I never used to think that it's possible to change your name. Like just back where we were from, like it's just not a normal thing, you know. And then when like obviously when I turned a certain age, I started traveling. I think maybe when I was like 15 or 16, I started traveling the world. I met so many people. You've heard so many cool names, and then you hear stories and all that, and then people tell me, "Oh, they've actually changed their name." I was like, "Oh shit, you can do that? Like really?" And then like you learn about all this stuff. It's so cool. And I mean, as much as we respect like what our parents gave us, but it's kind of like your identity.
Yo, for real. Like, I was a really insecure kid, you know? I didn't really like myself for a long time. And then I went on this big whole journey of, getting comfortable in my own skin. And fighting was a huge part of that. And the music was a huge part of that. And, discovering who I am and what's important to me is a huge part of that. And if I'm looking back, I think changing my name kind of symbolized some of that growth. And now people are like, "Oh, is that like your personal brand?" Or like, "Is that your Instagram?" And I'm like, "Nah, man, like I just changed that before Instagram was even a thing, you know?" So, that's it.
Man, that's so cool. Anyway, I want to ask you a little bit about like your journey in fighting, kickboxing, and Muay Thai. Is that correct? When did you start like getting into the whole combat sports?
I was 13 years old, and I started doing like a freestyle Taekwondo. Yeah, up at the local community hall. I used to walk up and bow.
I used to do like Taekwondo back when I was a kid as well. It's a very respectful.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Yeah, and it was a whole mix of different arts, but it was Lim's United Taekwondo, and I did that for 5 years. And I had my first like competitive point sparring tournament the first year I started training, and I really enjoyed it, man. Like it's the first thing that I was, I guess, passionate about, good at. And I had a whole bunch of different problems in my family life, which I've talked about a lot. I had a pretty dysfunctional childhood. And so it gave me a place to put a lot of, I guess, my anger and hurt feelings. And it gave me like a healthy catharsis, a healthy way to put all that difficult stuff. And then it also, like, again, it's all retrospective. When I was 15, I wasn't like, wow, this is great for my self-esteem. But it was great for my self-esteem, like my body changed and I got strong, and that happened internally as well to some degree. And then I started Thai boxing. I was doing both at the same time. I was going to school. I went to a pretty sporty, rough, all boys school. And one of the older guys like, "Bro, Taekwondo is all shit, bro. You should come to Muay Thai." And I thought it was pretty bad. And then I went to Thai boxing down at Balmoral Liga. And I was like, yo, these guys will waste me. And I was really interested in finding the most effective combat sport. And mixed martial arts wasn't huge back then. And from a self-defense viewpoint, I wanted to be, as proficient at combat as I could be. And Thai boxing seemed like much better than Taekwondo for, looking after yourself. And then I was doing both at the same time. It was like, I think I was doing like Thai boxing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Taekwondo Monday, Wednesday, got my black belt in Taekwondo, and then I just moved to Thai boxing. And I had my first Thai boxing fight when I was 18. And I was still in high school, and I was like, "Yo, this is awesome!" You know, like it was
Pretty
just
rough. Like, how did you find that switch from Taekwondo to Muay Thai?
I was really lucky that when I went to a Muay Thai gym, I went to Balmoral Liga. So
that was the first gym Muay Thai gym you walked
it was
into.
the first Muay Thai gym I went to, and it just so happened that back then it was like Ray Sefo, Ronnie Sefo, John Conway, Jason Sati, Jason Vermoa, like Tuan Marshall, Simon Chamberlain, like just some of the best dudes around, you know, not just nationally but internationally. And I was really looked after, and the transition was good, you know. Like it was hard. Like I was talking to someone today when I couldn't find like my jumper. I'm like, pretty sure I've got some brain damage because we used to spar so hard back then. But the transition wasn't too bad, you know. Like obviously the boxing, you know, all the head contact and head trauma and learning to clinch was quite an adjustment from, you know, the point sparring tournaments I'd done. But at the same time, all that point throwing stuff, you still get bruised and kicked about, and, you know, I've been stopped with body kicks. You know, big spinning back kick is not a good time in your solar plexus.
Yeah, talking about like the heavy sparring and all that, obviously, you know, that's like that's a lot of big names that you've just said there. And like people would know what, you know, everyone in that room is capable of. The thing, like, you know, a lot of people talk these days now is like with how to approach sparring, and like with all the heavy sparring and like the headshots and taking a lot of damage. Would you say, like looking back at it, because do you think you guys approach like a very heavy sparring very often? Like, because I think back then you spar like 2-3 times a week.
I'd
like,
spar Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, hard every time. And I was like 79 kilos, and 70 kilos, 69, 70 kilos against like...
And those big boys.
A big boy, like super heavyweight. I wasn't sparring with Ray in that, but because the gym was so strong, all the trickle down, like all the guys who didn't have like an international name were still good. And I used to spar with like Tristram and Twister and stuff, and he just chopped my legs to pieces. and everyone was really good, and but it was too hard, I would say. I mean, it depends though, because for me, I had to learn to be ruthless, not in the gym, but I had to learn to be competitive. And actually, Tristram Twister took me aside once, and I really appreciate him, and because I had pretty good skills when I was starting out, because I had that experience from the other martial art. But I was very like a bit shy, and I didn't really know like how to be competitive in the gym, and you know. And Twister, I really remember him pulling me aside and giving me a talk. He's like, bro, just like do your thing. No one's gonna take it personally. Sort of chat, like let them know what you got. Like you're here for a reason. And after that, like sparring got better because I didn't mind asserting myself. You know, I didn't mind getting on top of someone who might have been more experienced. So I'm grateful for that, one of many pep talks that the bro gave me. But when I think back to how we did spar, not just at Balmoral, but for that generation, you know, because I go spar at different gyms and stuff, I don't get my students now that I'm a coach to spar that hard because I'm mindful of the long-term injuries.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the one, I feel that for younger fighters as well, this is something that they don't get educated about, is those very heavy shots like in the gym, in sparring. Like I would say, you know, and you know, a lot of elite level fighters, I'm not talking about like just normal people, elite level fighters talk about this, and they share about this. Like you shouldn't be taking as much damage in the gym in training before your actual fight. Like you'd want to save yourself for the fight, and then that's when the fight is when you release everything. Obviously sometimes you got to bring it up a level to just get used to that kind of environment, you know, that very heavy work rate or high work rate, or like, you know, heavy punches, or you know, but that's like once in a while. I think like if you taking too much of that, like when you retire later on,
right,
it's gonna make a difference, man.
But there's
like,
most people aren't going to be living off fighting. They're not going to be making the bills off fighting, but they probably will have a family, a relationship with their partner and their children. And if you've got like CTE, yo, man, you're not going to be best suited to look after that family. You might have like mental health issues that come from all that head trauma. And we're seeing that with like NFL players. I look at professional boxing, where I would argue there's the most brain damage just due to the limited targets where you can strike. A lot of those guys have this twofold thing where they'll retire from this elite level sport where they're the center of attention all the time, and they have wealth and attention and all that internal validation that comes from that, and then they stop, so there's that gap in their life now. And then there's also this whole hidden history of head trauma and no one to really support them. You know, well, if we're doing that at a low level and there's no wraparound support, that's really troubling. There's going to be all these like permanently psychologically and neurologically damaged people out in society, and that makes me sad. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking now fight sports is the best thing I've ever done in my life, and I've been doing them for 28 years now, and I think I'm trying to do my maths, but at the same time we do need to like bring in that old school, we need to rein in that old school attitude of like winning in the gym. Like you say, you can be competitive, but you don't need to like drop your training partners. That's
or go to like all out wars. You know?
All out wars, man. It's bad.
Yeah, that's
because as much as you're risking permanent injury, you're not actually getting better.
Exactly.
That's what I learned. Like when you're worried about winning and not getting hurt sparring, you're not going to try what you're drilling because you're going to stick to what you know works for you defensively and offensively. And that means that you're not always going to progress. When you know that you can take some risks and someone might sweep you, or they might hit you for a cheeky jab, or you might walk into a teep, but you're not going to get dropped, then you're going to take it, and then you're going to work on your timing and how to actually do that technique that you did all week, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need to be mindful of that. We need to give ourselves room to progress technically, as well as not punch our memories out.
Yeah, either, you're either looking to like smash your partner, your buddy, or you're looking to survive and not take so much damage. And I think this is the kind of thing where I've actually watched like how the Muay Thai fighters in Thailand, when they spar, and you're probably more well aware of this, but like when they spar, they don't actually throw heavy shots at their partners, their sparring partners. Like,
nah, man.
It's just at that moment of impact, they pull it back. So it's like light, but it's very technical. And I think that's awesome. Like you actually learning so much more than just engaging in a war.
Dude, I've spent months and months. I've done about 11 different trips to Thailand for training and fighting back in the day. And I still take my students here before COVID. And yeah, you're right. The only time I've seen Thais going to war sparring is against foreigners, you know? And it's like some foreigner will be like going ham. Yeah, and then they're like, I'm going to have to check this dude because he'll hurt me.
Sometimes some very cocky foreigners come in and they think like they can just dominate.
I know.
And like, these guys are very humble. Like, the Muay Thai fighters I met in Thailand, they're really humble people. They're jokers most of the time. They're always laughing, and then like they're either always on the piss, they're drinking, they're partying. Like, but when they spar, like they're very, very respectful. And the thing is, like, they're not looking to hurt them.
That's the other thing, because in Thailand, it's a living. People forget that you go to a Kai Muay as a child to earn money to eat food to live. And you're fighting every month or whatever. And if you're getting hurt in the gym, you're not going to get the money that pays for your food or the food for your family.
Yeah,
and there's a cultural element to that. And here we've got a lot of guys who are insecure, or they've got like their machismo that they got to flex on, and they're going to go to the gym and they're going to try and be like the big dog. But often those guys don't compete, you know? They don't compete. They're not trying to be a New Zealand champion, an international champion, a professional fighter. They just want to go and like beat someone up. And those people need to understand that martial arts is about respect and self-control. I think there is an element for like the established fighters to teach those people that.
Yeah. Man, that's actually a topic we could go on for quite a bit, but and so many things. But yeah, I want to ask you, like, so you actually competed in kickboxing. You won several titles back in the day, and then did you start coaching while you were still fighting, or?
Yeah, man, I did. So I was fighting and had won a few titles in there, and like as an amateur, and then I went professional, and um, I went back to university because I got really sick of just working jobs that didn't really fulfill me. So and then I was working at a kickboxing supply shop, and one of my mates, Dylan Russell, who's an old Golden Gloves amateur boxing champ, he's like, bro, why are you doing this? You should be teaching kickboxing. Like, why aren't you personal training people? Like, and I was like, oh, I never really thought about it. And I went and asked John Conway, who was my trainer at the time, hey, do you mind if I start teaching while I still train? And he's like, yeah, go for it. And so, yeah, I started coaching, maybe I think it was 2007 or 2008 or something. Maybe 2007. Yeah, because down, if you're familiar with Auckland, down on Key Street, they're all bars and stuff now down in Britomart.
Yeah.
Well, there used to be this really cool old building before it was all done up. It was like this run-down old, like, multi-level building, and on the top was a boxing gym, and I would rent some space from then, and underneath us was the original Tukaha Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so...
Well, I wasn't around back then, but I've heard the names that you're
mentioning about. So City Boxing used to be up there, so yeah, I started coaching. I started just PTing, and then I had a whole bunch of, like, tattooed white boys, like, get in touch and like, oh, hey, bro, can we do some kickboxing with you? Can we do some Muay Thai with you? So that's how Team Hardcore started. And I've just kept it going. I've had to move lots of different gyms because I've always subleased space out of existing gyms. And at the moment, I'm in this position where my last place, the building got sold and demolished, and I don't have a new place to sublease out of, which is a bit of a bummer. Like, I actually have a deep emotional attachment to my students and running my own thing. Yeah. But my bro, Tony at City Liga, he allows me to use his gym to keep the most dedicated active while I look for a new space. But yeah, man, I'd wake up, go do some coaching, PTing, or look after young fighters. I actually used to go train Brad Riddell, train Joe Hopkins, train Slava Alexichek. We'd train in the morning, we'd run, I'd hold pads for them. Then I'd go up to university, and then I'd come back down to the gym in the afternoon. It was cool, man. Yeah, it was a good time of life.
It's pretty active. It's pretty tiring, I must say. Like,
I was real energetic, man. Like, all from my 20s and 30s. I'm slowing down now, I guess. I don't like getting up early anymore so much. People are like, can we do a 6 a.m. PT? I'm like, no, dog, we cannot. We cannot do a 6 a.m. PT. Yeah, 7:30.
It's not the same anymore.
Yo, it's not the same anymore. And but back then, yeah, I'd wake up and just love training with the boys. It was cool because I'm older than those guys, and it felt cool to go and share a bit of knowledge, and it's all how I socialize. Like, I don't really go out partying and all that, and I just like spending time with my bros. In the gym, training, bonding, talking and bonding things. That way, you go for a long run with someone 3 or 4 times a week, you get to know that person,
Exactly, man. But one thing is, like, how did you feel about that change, like, from fighting to coaching? Like, how was that for you? Like, for some people, they can do it, some they can't, but how did it come about for you?
Yeah, so I stopped fighting in 2013. So I was coaching and fighting for about 5 or 6 years, and then 2013 I retired, and then just moved straight into coaching. And to be honest, it was quite hard. If I look again, all this is retrospective, but I was going through a lot of stuff in my life at that time, and I had pretty up and down mental health. And then stopping fighting did leave that huge gap in I went from like
big hole,
huge hole. You go from being the center of attention and everyone's looking after you, and people are like, yo, what's up, man? For years, people are bumming people, you're still fighting, bro. I used to love it. And, like, you do get, like, your ego rubbed and you feel validated. And more importantly, fighting, as you know, is, like, this huge sense of purpose. There is, like, a spiritual component to martial combat. And not much has ever compared to that. And I've had a pretty atypical life. I've traveled around the world with bands and concerts and interviewed musicians and rock stars and celebrities. And, like, fighting is, like, still one of the most unique things you can ever do to have a larger than life experience. And then all of a sudden I didn't have it anymore. And I had all this other stuff going on in my personal life. So I think stopping fighting kind of was bad for my depression, you know? And so I basically have I still live the lifestyle, even though I don't compete anymore. So I still, you know, I was getting pretty down mentally. And then, you know, I just was like, oh, just got back in. I was like, oh, I'll run a marathon and then I'll go back to training. You know what I mean? And so I'm still training. You know,
training for a marathon is no easy feat as well.
No, I've done a couple of marathons. I've never done an ultra or any of that crazy David Goggins shit. But, like, that guy's out of the gate. But
it's on another level.
It's on another level. But the concept is the same. You know, like I could lie in bed and feel like a piece of shit, and I did do that when I was really depressed. But eventually I had to take some radical self-ownership of like, is this me for the rest of my life? Getting out of shape and unhappy and miserable and wallowing? Or do I get up and go get it and try and make the most of it?
It's interesting you know, talking about depression. You know, I think one thing is sometimes people fail to realize that they are suffering from depression.
I didn't know that I was depressed until I went to work one day after missing heaps of work, and I'd go to work and I'd like mope about and just clearly be unhappy. And I had this really awesome manager, Betty McLaren, older woman, right? She'd been in social work. I was working in alcohol and drug harm reduction for a long time.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, do you suffer from depression? Like really? And I started crying in the middle of the office, man. Because I carried heaps of pain around. And I was like, no, I don't suffer from depression. But
it's hard to admit it.
Well, I didn't know what to look for. Like back then, we didn't have, even it wasn't that long ago. This is like 8 years ago. I didn't really have this understanding of what I was going through. I just thought I was sad. But I was actually, I went to a psychologist after that and started figuring my shit out. And I actually bumped into that woman many years later and said, hey, I just want you to know that you asking me that led to me getting better in some regard, you know, like not solely.
That triggered
that, like, but I was like, oh, well, here I am crying in the office. like, so clearly there's something going on. So, and she was like, oh, really? And I gave her this big thank you. And she was like, really, you know, like, and I think that's why these discussions are important and why I'm vulnerable on like social media and places like that. Because I want other people to know that it's all right to not be all right. And also to check in on people. Not just like, how are you? But like, how are you really? And how can we help you? Or what should we do something together? Do you know what I mean? Instead of like, nah, sweet bro.
Hey, yeah, I think. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Yeah, I think that's the thing for like guys, man. I don't know how to put it. Like maybe it's since we were young, or for most people, like you've been taught a lot of things, and like you always want to seem like you're alright. You know, you don't need help. You can handle it. Like, and I think that's maybe like one of the things that I used to have when I was a kid was like I didn't like to trouble people with my problems. Like I look at it in a way that, man, I have my problems. I've got like 10 problems. But this other guy might have 20 problems, man. I don't want to trouble my mate, you know, my buddy with my problems. My problems are just small, you know, like he might be going through some shit that I don't know about. And I think for me, it was like, you know, well, I'll try to fix it on my own, you know, I try to work it out. But yeah, I guess maybe sometimes some things are just too big for yourself to fix, you know.
Well, I also think we don't need to make our problems. I also don't think we need to diminish our problems. Like we do need to keep them contextual and relative. Like, oh, I dented my car. Oh, your baby died. Those are not the same things. But at the same time, your suffering is your suffering, and you don't need to downplay it because perhaps your life was more privileged than someone else's. Do you know what I mean? So I do think we need to learn to find space in our friendships to share and also create atmospheres and environments and relationships where we know if I need to, I can ask for help. Because if we don't do that, more of us are going to keep killing ourselves. More of us are going to keep abusing drugs. More of us are going to keep abusing alcohol. More of us are going to be violent towards our partners, and all these sorts of things that, like the pain comes out of us somewhere. And if we hold on to it by ourselves, well, we're going to explode eventually, because no human is capable of carrying everything that life throws at us forever. You need to know how to put the weight down and put it somewhere constructive. And what society does is it normalizes unhealthy ways of putting the weight down. It doesn't really put the weight down if we're genuine and honest. It just sort of it's kind of like society's like, here's a cortisone shot for your problems, here's some drugs, here's some alcohol, here's some pornography, here's some casual street violence, here's some shopping, here's some junk food. All those things are easy. Going to a psychologist, having a cry with your friend, writing in a journal, waking up every day and going to training, eating a clean diet, going to bed on time, not using social media too much. Those things are hard, which is why a lot of people don't do them. And also they require a degree of self-responsibility. And I say that not saying that it's on a mentally unwell person or a person struggling with stress to fix themselves. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying that no one can change you. You have to change yourself. It's on us to meet people halfway and say, hey, I love you. What's going on? How can I help? What is it that I can do? How can I support you? I'm here for you to call me anytime, and I will come with you to the therapist or the office or the doctor or whatever it is. I will go for a run with you. I will catch up with you, and we won't get drunk because you're trying to quit alcohol. Do you know what I mean? Like we can't spontaneously do it by ourselves, but we have to want to be able to do it if we want to change. Because you can lead a horse to water, as they say, but you cannot make it drink. Yeah. And I know that because, my father's a chronic alcoholic. All that shit runs through my family. I worked in alcohol and drug harm for a long time. I'm surrounded by personal friends who've had all manner of problems. And the ones who've gotten better are the ones who have taken ownership and taken the help on offer. Do you know what I mean? And as people who are in support roles, it can be really hard watching someone not do the work. But we have to learn how to step back. Here when you're ready, bro. Because when we push people, eventually they'll cut us off or cut us out. But for our own well-being, sometimes too, it can be, we can enable someone to maintain a shitty lifestyle that's damaging them and the people around them if we kind of always give them a pass. But if we're like, hey, look, I can't be with you right now, but I'm here when you're ready, call me. And I'll be there when you're ready, then that too can eventually be the wake-up call someone needs,
Yeah, and, you're talking about, like, suicide and all that. Like, I understand New Zealand has one of the highest rates of suicide, which is it's pretty serious. But, like, I mean, you can't lie, like, well, I don't know. Maybe not everybody experienced this in their life, but like when I was younger, man, I had a lot of times where you had so much problem, so much stress, like you think that, man, maybe I should just end my life, like, and then that solves all my problems, like that actually came to me like several times in my life. Yeah, and I guess like I don't know. I guess I want to say maybe fortunate, or I don't know what's the right word to use, but I was always a competitive person. I didn't like to lose.
Yeah.
And this is real funny. Some people think it's kind of twisted, but like when those thoughts came to me, and I was like, yeah, maybe I should just end it. Like just call it quits. There were several. Even when I was an adult as well. There was years ago. That was a big thing that happened, and I was on that path you're saying. It's very negative path. I wanted to like end. But then there was always that part of me, like I was very competitive. I was like, man, I can't quit now. Like, I can't quit, man. I don't want to lose. So you just keep going and keep fighting, and eventually you come out of it. And I think, bro, you're talking about like, when someone reaches out to you and try to help you. It's a really good mate of mine, bro. He sat down with me and we had a long talk. And like I was frustrated, bro, because like I knew that he can't, like he can help me, but when you're in that state, like you think that, man, nobody can help me, like nobody can help me solve my problems. But little do we know that they actually are trying to help us. And like one thing that he really said to me that helped me was like, look, you have, because I'm an overthinker, bro. I think about like so many things at any point in time. Like even when we're talking, sometimes like thoughts just run into my head. So I have like 10 things in my head at any point in time, and it's crazy. So he was telling me like, you think too much. You've got like 10 problems. Solve one problem at a time.
Oh, nice.
Bro, he said to me like, you need to dissect everything, spread it all out. Okay, what's all your 10 problems? And he was like, okay, tell me all your problems now, and then we'll go through it one by one. Let's figure out one solution for each thing. And I promise you, bro, like whichever that I can help you, I'll help you to do it. And then like we did that, bro. And that one experience that we had, like it was at that point, there was like so many things like coming on me. I think I had a car accident, I had like money issues, I had like, bro, so many things, like family problems, relationship problems, all sorts of crap. And when we sat down and we did that, like man, it really helped me, bro. And from then on, I use that principle in a lot of things that I do. Like, cause man, if we start to bombard ourselves with too many things, we're just gonna explode, bro. It was crazy. And it's funny, like this thing that he taught me, and when I got to know him a little bit more and all that, I found out that this guy was like, he was suffering from depression like a couple of times. He actually went through a whole lot of crap. Like, it's crazy the things that he had gone through as well. And the fact that he could share that with me, like that really helped. Yeah, and like I feel like sometimes we don't learn about this stuff, man. Like when we go to school, like there's not really like the stuff. Well, maybe my parents had a different kind of upbringing, so like I didn't learn this from my parents. I didn't learn this in school. Like, man, and so many things we don't learn in school.
Yo,
about navigating life.
I always joke. I'm like, yo, why they try to teach me algebra? Maybe when they could have taught me how to like have a healthy relationship, that would have been cool.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You think about it.
They're starting to change now because I do a lot of work speaking in schools.
Yeah.
Like I travel all around the country, Australia, New Zealand, and it's dope. And I do get to go talk about mental health sometimes, or alcohol and drugs, or pornography, or healthy relationships. And I'm like, we never had this. Like, I'm so grateful that the school is bringing people like me in, because it's not just me. There's heaps of wonderful organizations and individuals who are educators. But for us, we never did it, and we learned by making mistakes. And I think in some ways, like you said, your friend who came and helped you, he'd actually been through depression. And he turned around with his learnings from that experience and shared them with you. And I think that's why I like conversations like the one you and I are having. And millions of these happening all around the world simultaneously. And that's the good of it. Like, we can be wounded healers. We can take the losses that we've had and turn them into learnings, like we say in Muay Thai, right? Like win or learn rather than win or lose.
Win or lose, yeah.
And if we apply that to our life, then we're going to constantly evolve as individuals, and hopefully we're going to also help those who are coming up behind us have an easier go of it. And I think that's the dope thing, like about difficulties. And if we can shift, I'm saying the dope thing about difficulties, you don't actually want lives, I would argue, that are devoid of pain and suffering. Because pain and suffering can be actually a wonderful teacher if we're open to learning. We can be like, fuck this. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Yeah.
Like, this sucks and this is so unfair. And you know what? Lots of things do suck and are unfair and are unjust. But that's not the word out to get you. That's just life. Life is an inherent... That's the first noble truth of Buddhism. Like, to live is to suffer. And we cannot avoid it. We can only learn how to embed more and more processes into our lifestyles that keep us well and open to learning from that difficulty, so they don't drown us. And that's where I think schools and stuff could do a better job, teaching better coping mechanisms, better ways to actually not even coping mechanisms. I really think most people's lifestyles in this day and age, you know, like you said, there's so much stuff that I have to deal with, 10 different things, car accidents and bills, you know, and modern life is exhausting. So, you know, social media is a big one for me that affects my mental health, you know, but it's also really important for business and engagement and social connection. And hey, you coming to the party? I didn't see about the party. Well, it was on Facebook, you know, like, did you see what happened in the news? No, I haven't been on social media. Wow, oh my God, didn't you know? It's kind of hard to avoid, but it can make us really unwell. Regardless, a lot of our lifestyles aren't conducive to good mental health. And I think that's where we need to do a better job, is normalizing building these things into our life 24/7 rather than just when we're sick or when we're unwell, you know? Yeah.
Richie, when did you get into this whole public speaking thing, or why did you get into it? What triggered or what sparked that whole...
I got asked to do this talk, I think it was maybe 2014, and it was cool. There's a series called Creative Mornings, which is a New York-based initiative. Yeah, it's like a global breakfast conversation. And a good friend of mine, Eddie Helm, she ran an agency called Curative. Haven't seen Eddie for a minute, but she invited me to come talk, and the theme was on being a rebel. And they just give you the word rebel, roll with that. And I was like, oh, cool, okay. And so I gave this talk, and for me, society teaches us that to be a rebel is to do drugs and to party and to live this like self-destructive Wiz Khalifa, so what, I get high, like that's being rebellious. But if you look at it, most people drink, do drugs, aren't particularly mindful of looking after their bodies, aren't particularly mindful of where their money goes when they're shopping. There's like mainstream sexist and misogynistic attitudes are embedded in a lot of our culture. So I said, well, being a rebel is actually being like clear-minded and politically engaged, and that's actually countercultural. And it went really well. Like people really love the talk, like globally, you know, because it gets shared online and yada yada yada. And the
power of the internet.
Yeah. It's a good and a bad thing. And so that was the first talk I ever gave. And my good friend Damien, who's a singer in the band Blind Spot, he just texted me, he's like, yo, they don't want to see a speaker, they just want to see you. So I went out there and I just kind of was me, kind of awkwardly. Like, you know, if you look at the talk, it's probably not the best talk you've ever seen, but people really liked it for the time. And then, yeah, people slowly started inviting me. And I was still working in that alcohol and drug harm prevention job at Auckland Council, and running, you know, training fighters and stuff by then, and had a lot going on. But I went through the lowest point in my mental health at the end of 2016. And I had a real awesome young manager who I've since talked to, you know, found him online. I was like, yo, what's up, man? And I went in after a month off work for, you know, like depression, and said, hey, man, how would you feel if I resigned? And he said, oh my God, I've been waiting for you to resign. Like you'll actually go and flourish if you just do the things that you're doing and more of it. And so he was awesome, you know, like he was really, really awesome. He made leaving this job I've been in for 6 years really easy. And I basically had a business-minded friend who said, how much are you charging people for these talks you're doing? And I was like, nothing. She was like, you what?
I just do it for free.
I do it for free. And she's like, well, okay, let's build you a website and yada, yada, yada. And it's really just grown from putting a photo up on Facebook, and people are like, oh, will you come to my school? And then they'll email me and I'll be like, sure. What's your budget? And it just rolls like that, man. So the last 5 years I've been living full time from, you know, I do have, you know, an honors degree. I'm working on a master's degree. Wow. I've worked for government agencies and family violence prevention for about 8 years now. So as well as alcohol and drug stuff. So I have heaps of professional and academic understandings behind everything I talk about. I'm not just like a motivational speaker. Although I have done that, like, yo, this is where I come from, this is where I am now, here are some of the steps it might help
Help
you.
you, yeah.
But I'm teaching essentially, and on a good day, I'm really engaging, and I can relate to younger people because I'm not super young, but I'm like youth adjacent. You know what I mean? And like I'm in the gym all the day, all the time. I hang with guys 20 years younger than me, and I'm fucking kickboxing.
It does actually make a lot of difference.
Yo, man, like what I see when it comes to the conversations around social change is here's a whole bunch of hyper educated, economically privileged, middle to upper class people telling all these other people how to live without any actual empathy or understanding of their experience. And that just doesn't work. You actually have to meet people where you are. So I go in, I'm like, depending on the audience, like I've been into Poremoremo prison, or I've been talking to the police, or I've been talking to youth offenders, I've been speaking to universities. And because my life experience has been diverse, like I don't even do it intentionally. They call it code switching. Like when I'm hanging out with the boys, right? I don't speak like I'm at university, you know? Hello, gentlemen. You know, I'm not using like jargon to show off. It's pointless. I'm like, yo, bro, why do you think like that? You know, and unfortunately, I see all these fucking people on social media like telling other people off. And I'm like, yo, you really think that they're going to read your like 3,000 word thought piece and adjust their language to be less sexist or racist or whatever? I'm not saying give those people a pass. I'm saying find the tools that work if we want to make those things change. And that's why I'm good at what I do, because I'm good at picking the audience most of the time. Sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes I'm either too high or too jokey. But that's like any day at work, right? You know, like sometimes you go to sparring and you get hiding. You know, other days you're like big dog, you know? So it's just, and I'm constantly learning from it, you know? Like there's always a reflective practice after every talk, you know? How can I do this better?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about that is like, for me, like when I attend talks or you listen to speeches and all that, sometimes when it's too serious, like you don't really, you tend not to absorb as much, or
right. I agree. It's not a university lecture. There needs to be, I would argue, depending on the talk and the audience, it has to be relatable.
Exactly.
If you don't see yourself or your experience in the presentation that you've paid money to attend, generally, well, you're going to disregard it, you know? So you need to, like I said, meet people where they're at, not expect them to jump 57 hurdles in order to try and comprehend, understand, and empathize about what you're talking about.
So Richie, you go to a lot of schools and you talk to a lot of teenagers these days. What is like you'd say for like kids these days? What is like one of the most common or biggest like struggles or challenges for them?
Yeah, man. What are some of the biggest struggles? That's a hard one. Well, obviously mental health with high rates of youth suicide, young men 18 to 24. But that starts prior to being 18, you know. Social media bullying, social media use, healthy sexual relationships and healthy relationships, because most young people's sex education comes through online pornography these days. And anyone watching this, I'm not even saying don't look at porn. I'm not saying don't sleep around. I'm not saying don't have wild sex, you know, like if you've got a crazy dungeon in your house and that's what turns you on, all power to you.
Yeah, that's
but
your
you
thing.
need that's your thing. Like, yo, get freaky. Like, but you need to know how to make sure all your sexual relationships are kind, respectful, consent based. And porn doesn't teach that. And so I've gone to schools and 14-year-olds are getting raped on the school grounds. Like, seriously, I get sad talking about it, bro. Or there's this huge peer pressure. Send nudes, send me a nude. Or can you do this and send it to me? And then
it turns into like revenge.
It becomes revenge. Yeah, all right, sweet. We're going to break up and I'm going to put that all around the school. And there's what we would call a gendered nature to that, in that boys demand this from girls more often than reverse. Although there are exceptions to that. You know, I spoke at this one school, a group of boys had catfished this other boy. They pretended to be an adult woman and pulled out some nude photos of her or whatever from some website, sent them to this young boy, and they're like, oh, send me some nudes back, I want to see you naked. So he does, thinking it's some hot adult woman. And then, of course, the boy sent his nudes all around the school. Boy drops out of school. And then there are huge life impacts from that.
It is, man.
And so our kids, to quickly answer your question, have to deal with this hyper-mediated world now in a way that we didn't. You can make a mistake back in the day, and the only person who's remember it is you, And now everything is online, and we live in an unforgiving culture where if you did something 10 years ago, well, you're guilty for it today, as if people haven't grown or changed. And like I said earlier, do you know what the best teacher is? Making mistakes. Maybe you did say something racist, sexist, homophobic 10 years ago. Man, I'm not the same person I am 10 days ago sometimes. If we don't allow a forgiveness for that, and I'm extrapolating out from the school experience, what sort of world is that?
Rough.
But that's it, with cancel culture and call out culture. I was so stoked. I saw Israel, some stupid woman sent him a message when he was complaining about not having a microwave, right? It's like, yo, I just want some better food in my hotel.
Or heat up my food.
Why don't I get this cold food? Yeah. And some woman who was quite racist and xenophobic, I don't know if you saw this, messaged him and was like, well, if you don't like it, go back home. And which is a racist, horrible thing to say. But you know what the brother did? He blacked out her avatar, and he blacked out her name. Yeah. Because he said, because I don't want her to get lynched online. And I respected that so much, because he still makes the point. He still makes the point that there is racism out there and we need to challenge it. And he said, because I hit him up about it, and he said, yeah, no, anyone who knows her will see this photo and maybe they'll say something to her. But all these strangers aren't going to bombard her and tell her to kill herself. Yeah, because which is a real thing now.
It is.
And we're going back to schools. Well, that happens in schools too, man. I spoke at Western Springs College on Pink Ribbon Day, I think, or Pink Shirt Day, Anti-Bullying Day. Yo, this kid had killed himself from that stuff, man. Like, our kids are seeing what we do as adults and doing the same stuff. We live in a society that weaponizes the internet, and our young people grow up in that. I'm old enough to have lived pre-internet. I know.
Yeah.
But now everyone goes up with the world in their back pocket, and it's hyper addictive, and it's making things worse. If you look at, particularly for a young woman, rates of anxiety and depression, there's a causation with how much you are on social media. Hyper comparisons. I got to look this certain way. If you talk to plastic surgeons, they'll tell you that young people now turn up with an image of themselves with their favorite Snapchat filter. Can you make me look more like this?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's crazy, man.
And so we really need to do a better job of regulating the internet, I would argue. And also, and this is a bigger question. So I'm getting my coffee's kicking in now. Yeah. Why, myself included, bro? Like I have a social media addiction. I use it too much. But when I was really mentally unwell, I used it even more. Because it takes us away from ourselves the way drugs and sex and junk food does. It numbs our affect and kind of allows us to retreat from our feelings to be kind of here, and I'm not present anymore, right? And we see it all the time, man. I go running through the city all the time and then fucking dodging people like zombies walking down the street. In Melbourne, there's literally ads look for trams, this huge metallic object moving at pace so you don't get killed, because people are so hooked on their phones, and they're designed to be that way. They're designed to be addictive. And yet the bigger question is, why are so many people so unhappy that they can't bear to be present in their own life more often than not?
It's sad, man.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, you see, you have all the public figures, and you have all these popular people who just, or when we talk about girls, and they post all the really nice photos and all that sort of stuff, and it's scary, man. Everybody wants to look a certain way, they've got to be a certain way, they've got to have certain things. I think, I mean, as a young adult, if you don't really know yourself, you can kind of get caught in that whole bubble, and you want to keep up with that train. But yeah, like, you think about it, like, it doesn't really help or benefit you. Well, sometimes it does, but
not really. Like, and it's not even just young women. Like young women have always had young women have always had societal pressures to fit into the beauty mold, right? Like, you got to be skinny, you got to have straight hair or whatever, and it is a really like Eurocentric focus of beauty historically. Like in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you never saw like black models or like mixed race women in advertising, and that's changing now, and that's wonderful because we need representation, right? But all of this affects a young person's self-esteem when you're growing up without seeing yourself in the world around you. And now we're starting to have really good diversity of body sizes. Like, not everyone is like an anorexic model. You have normal size,
normal people. Yeah.
We see that for young men now too. My Instagram ad, and I'm like, why is it Instagram? What does it say about me that Instagram's trying to sell me this? Will sell you like apps to improve how you look in the gym. Like it would get like photo, because I take like a gym selfie. I was like, here's me and the boys after training. Or they'll sell you like some undershirt that makes your posture better and like make you look more defined. And as a personal trainer who's had young men in the gym come in and they're like obsessed about their body fat, we go to like Les Mills on a Saturday afternoon. There's all these dudes on like peptides and like BCAAs and like taking like fucking HGH to like look a certain way. And you say like, what is that doing to us? Well, it's not making us mentally well. It's not making us spiritually well. It's not improving our connection to ourselves or connection to other people. We're trying to fit into a societal idea of like, this is what being a good, successful person is. And the data tells us more of us are miserable. We're materially, a lot of us, more well off than ever, right? But psychologically, we're more unhealthy than ever. And even physically, we're more unhealthy than ever. You are in the minority if you're not overweight or obese. And that's not to blame overweight or obese people for being lazy or anything. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the same way we use drugs, alcohol, sex, and all the stuff I've been talking about today to feel better, we can use food. And we live in what we call an obesogenic environment, an environment where it's really easy to get super calorie dense food really cheaply. And that means that we have socioeconomic rates of health inequality. If you live in particular neighborhoods, there's heaps of junk food, heaps of Maccas, not a lot of money, heaps of advertising that no one wants to restrict or limit. Here's some sugar, here's some fat, shove it in your face. You work like a long day, low paying wage. You're not going to have time or energy to like cook like a nutritious meal necessarily. And then we wonder why like so many people are dying from preventable illness. And it's because society structures it that way. And it shouldn't be that way. And again, it comes back to that question I asked about social media. Food is a great way to take yourself away from yourself. It's a great way. Like when I'm sad, I'm like, eating. Where's the ice cream at? Do you know what I mean? But I'm also mindful that the other things, I have all these other things embedded in my life: exercise, training, community, sense of purpose. So I never get that low anymore. Like, don't get me wrong.
Sometimes,
even last year, I had some real struggles, but my baseline was higher than where it used to be. And a lot of people haven't had that or aren't privileged enough to have that, And I think we need to do a much better job of supporting our more economically marginalized communities. Like, we don't really talk about social class and social economic inequality anymore. But we should. We need better wages. We need better education. We need better facilities for people who don't live in affluent neighborhoods, We need to normalize health and well-being, exercise, and all that sort of stuff. That's not on the Instagram fucking wellness circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying about this. I just had this conversation not too long ago with a mate of mine. Like, as much as like people don't want to like admit it, but when he was talking about schools for his boy, and I said, bro, like, to be, it sucks to say this, but like, what school you put your boy in, you know, in this day and age, like, it will affect the direction that he, a very higher chance that it will affect where he will be going, you know, or the direction that he's going to be heading. Like, it's so sad. Like, that is actually the case. The number of opportunities that this kid has, the level or the quality, the level of education, or, you know, just the access to a lot of things. Like, as much as people, you know, they say like, oh, nah, a kid could come out from a community school. I know, like, yes, I understand, but in this days, like, that is not the case, you know, like, you know what I mean? If, for example, now you go to like a really good school, and I go to like a not as good school, and you have friends who families run businesses, and, you know, they're millionaires, or they're really successful, whatever, in whatever fields that they do. And like, for example, my parents and my friends, they were just average, you know, like, I'm not going to know so many things, like, you know, how to run a business, or, you know, how to whatever. Like, if you're an athlete, you're into sports, like, how to eat well, bro. It's like what you're saying about eating well and all that. Like, I never knew all these things, man. Like, you know,
it's called social capital. There actually was a sociologist called, I think he's a sociologist called Pierre Bourdieu, who talks about that a lot. I studied education because I wanted to be a teacher for a minute, and then I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. Way too hard. So I dropped out. But I remember this dude, Pierre Bourdieu, talked about social capital. It's exactly what you're talking about. If you go to like an affluent school, your friend's dad will hook you up when you finish at university with a job at his company, and then in your fast track, right?
Yeah, bro.
Whereas if everyone in your neighborhood's a gangster, or they're coming out of prison, or your parents are working, I guess, working class jobs, you don't necessarily have the same opportunities, and that's that needs to change, you know. Like, we don't have an even playing. People have this myth that it's an even playing field, and it's not. And there are intersections that lead there too, you know, like you know, the color of your skin, you know, like your sexuality, like all those sorts of things can play into the opportunities that are provided to you throughout life, because the system still does treat certain people, namely white people, like, more fairly than others. That's not a blanket rule, but we do need to be mindful of that too, and work constructively to have this twofold conversation. How do we continue to dismantle structural racism? Not to get too heavy, but, you know, we need to address that, and at the same time, how do we have this conversation around social class, which I think has kind of slipped by the wayside at this juncture in time? How do we improve the working conditions and wages of people who are on like low salary jobs or 0-hour contracts? Sort of, I know dudes who are like employed and they're on call all the time, and they're not guaranteed 30 hours a week. They might get 4. Do you know what I mean? But they're meant to be available all the time to go to work.
That's harsh, bro.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And they're like, yo, well, I can't take another job because I have a contract at this job, but that job doesn't pay me anything. Or I've only got 3, 4, or 5 hours of work this week. Don't have holiday pay, don't have sick pay. If I leave this job, I don't get a payout. And you need to change that. And that's where we need to have political conversations. We need to get people voting for parties that will actually improve those things.
You know, you mentioned about this stuff. I want to talk about something that I actually noticed, which was, man, it's real toxic. But there are certain, like, okay, you know, like entry level jobs, or, you know, you don't need to have like a high qualification or whatever. I've seen myself personally, bro, as that when you start working in this environment, and like, for example, when you want to leave, or you want to upgrade or move on to something better, there are people who'll be like, man, nah, you sure you want to do that, man? You're gonna suffer, man. It's gonna be hard for you. Like, bro, I've seen that before, and I was like, man, what do you mean, man? Like,
as in like your homies?
Yeah, you know, or maybe like even the worst ones, like your managers, or, You know, they kind of want to keep you there.
Oh,
and
wow.
don't, and like,
Okay.
not, I'm not talking about my current like situation here or whatever, like, but previously, you know, and I noticed that there's this kind of, like, they don't want to see you, you know,
Elevate.
They
Succeed.
don't want to see you get something better. Like, and it's crazy, bro, that jealousy or that, like, you know, there's no support, bro. And like, they're like, nah, it's gonna be hard. When you tell someone you want to do something, they always give you 10 negative things, bro, straight away. They'll be like, nah, it's too hard. It's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. I remember because there was a point in time, like, when I was studying back then, bro, I used to like study in the day and work nights. So that was how I used to earn money and support myself and all that. And then yeah, one of the things was like I got to know about like working in the oil and gas industry, because that was where the money was, you know. Like I was chasing the money back then. And you know, I told some mates, like, I want to do this, I want to travel the world, bro. I'm gonna work in the oil and gas industry. I'm gonna travel the world. I'm gonna get big money. I'm gonna like, the company's gonna pay for me to travel and all that. And when I told them that, nah, like some of the replies I got was that, nah, it's bullshit, bro. Like, now what do you think you can? What do you makes you think you can get it? Like, that's crazy. But for me, I use that as fuel, bro, to push me to go and do it. And I actually did it. I actually did it. But it's crazy because when you think about it, some people might not be as like, you know, mentally, they might not be as like as strong, or, you know, that if you think about it, there might have been so many people out there, millions of people out there who've had their dreams crushed, you know, because they didn't have that strong mindset to push and go. And like, you know, these people could have been like great, you know, but they just get
They're the nail. They get hammered back down.
yeah, bro.
I honestly, I'm not sure if you're talking about when you were in New Zealand when that happened, but
No, it was not here, but
was it with your homies overseas? I
yeah.
think in general, in my experience, I'm not an expert on this.
Yeah.
I'm not an anthropologist, but in my experience, yeah, that's true. I think people are often threatened by other people's growth or other people's desire to be more than they are now. And I've come to think that's because you kind of for a minute are a mirror and they don't really like what they see. And it's easier to break the mirror or pull it down than work on yourself, like we said before, you know, at the start of this conversation.
Yeah. With the one finger out and three fingers back at yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People are like, oh, you're fucking blah, blah, blah. You're all shit. You think you're clever. You think you're special. You're the same as me. And it's like, yeah, I am the same as you. So maybe you should try harder to work on yourself. I see this all the time. You know, I don't drink alcohol, and neither does my partner. And she started this thing called No Beers, Who Cares, to help people have a place to socialize.
Cool, that's really cool. Yeah.
To help people socialize without alcohol, because when you go out and you don't drink, or you're trying to just have a break from a drink, you don't have to be like sober like I am. People always be, why aren't you drinking? Well, come on, just have one, lighten up, blah 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 blah, and they'll try and like tear you down and criticize you and make fun of you. Or it's basically anything. Like, whenever you put yourself out there, in the New Zealand context at least, people love throwing stones at you, and they love it when you fail, and they love trying to find a reason why you're full of shit. And that reason these days, with social media and stuff, it doesn't even have to be true. People can just say anything, and then everyone's like, yeah, we knew it. And yeah, you know, Israel gave that speech about tall poppy syndrome. Tall poppy syndrome is a thing.
It's real.
Like, it is real, and it's vicious, and the internet makes it all the worse. Because people can, like I said, people just make up stories about someone they don't like, or they completely misinterpret things. Like this t-shirt. This t-shirt says, make empathy great again. Because I think racism sucks. I think Donald Trump sucks. I put a meme up once that said, make empathy great again. Someone said, you should make a t-shirt. I'd buy that. So I did. And then people all around the world bought it. And I'm like, cool, empathy's a cool thing, right? Like, let's call about other people. And then I had a couple of like super woke people. They're like, you're profiting off white supremacist imagery. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, we find any reason to criticize someone these days.
To bring someone down.
And bring someone down when we could just be like, well, I don't like it. It's not my thing. Why don't I just say nothing? You know, unless someone's actively being bad or actively hurting other people, why do we have to throw stones? You look at the comment section of the Herald about anything. But that basketball player who, what was his name? I think him and his family didn't have to do quarantine for some compassionate reason. I think he had 2 autistic daughters. I think he plays in the Breakers or something like that. Yo, people like, he's a privileged person and blah, 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 blah. And just like furious that this man had some exception to the quarantine rules to help his autistic children. You know, people are just savage, and
do they even know what it's like?
People don't even. That's it. People aren't empathetic. People don't think about other people's situations and all the myriad of complex factors that have led them to say, "I'm going to take this higher position because I've worked really hard and I'm really proud of myself and I want to extend myself and I want to earn more money and I want to educate myself and I want to be more." You know, people don't necessarily like that because it might be challenging for them. You know, it's like I put this thing up on Instagram once, and most people were into it, but some people went mad. And it was like, you'll never get hate from someone doing better than you.
That's really true. Yeah,
don't you think? Like, I look at like David Goggins and people like John Joseph, who's an inspirational guy I follow, and you know, that guy Tony V, who I'm not particularly a big fan of, but like he's got some truth. And he did this whole thing on like internet trolls, which relates to what you're talking about. Internet trolls are like your mates writ large. You know, your friends at the workplace who are like, "Nah, bro, that's not you," or "Nah, bro, you can't do that." There's like internet trolls. It's like they just wallow in negativity. And if I'm being compassionate, are projecting their own inner pain and their own inner dissonance and their own unfulfilled dreams and their own struggles onto someone else. You know, like, and it actually kind of makes me sad. I'm like, yo, man, your life must really, really be painful to be in if your full-time job is sitting on your phone saying horrible things about people you've never met and will never meet. And I'm compassionate to that. But at the same time, I'm like, yo, fuck you, man. Why? Like, it hurts to being on the end of that. Like, I bet, like, imagine, and you know, you kind of just have to roll with it. You know, like what you think Joe Rogan or Jacinda Ardern or Israel Adesanya like reads the comments. Sometimes they might, but like they're not going to let it stop them, right? Exactly. And it goes back to what you're saying at the start of the question that I've kind of ranted about. Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Some people might not be strong enough. Some people might just get back in their shell and stay living at a 65% life for fear of upsetting the people around them, and it sucks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things as well. Like, you know, some people struggle with that when for example, it makes it harder if it's the people closest to you. When you're trying to tell them, like, for example, if you have a partner and you're trying to tell them, look, man, I'm not fulfilled, you know, I want to do big things, great things, I want to achieve stuff, I want to go and try to, you know, like sometimes if like, imagine if it's your partner, man, your partner says like, oh, do you need to, like, man, like, you just feel like, you know, I want to do this, man, like, you've got that drive. When you have someone that close to you who's not as passionate, it's hard, man.
Yo, it's actually crazy. If you're talking about romantic relationships,
bro,
you need to be with someone who's on the same mission, man.
At least has the same idea. They don't need to be
the same interests, but the same, like, I'm going to be driving my ship as fast as I can, as far as I can. And I'm going to be the same. And we might not even see each other that much sometimes because we're out there, like, doing our thing. But I'm here to support you mutually. And that's what you need. Rather than someone who's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's, you know, it's hard. That's hard, you know?
It is. Sorry, I just want to go back a little bit about when we were talking about like kids and having struggles and troubles. You know, based on your experience, like, how do like parents these days, young parents, approach this situation, man? How do you talk to your kids? Like, how do you tell them? You know, how do you even start the conversation?
I think it's about educating yourself as much as you can about the world your kids live in. Because I'll often go to a school and talk to the students in the day, do 2 or 3 talks, different age groups, and then parents in the evening. And I'll talk about pop culture, because that's what we're all shaped by. And parents will have no idea about the songs their kids are listening to, the porn their kids are like masturbating to.
But that's the thing. Parents don't want to. I think this is
they're like, not my kid.
Yeah,
and I'm like, your kid, dude. And
they don't want to accept.
They don't want to accept it. They don't want to look at the language they might use in the home, the role modeling that they're presenting. But when you spell it out for them in gentle, kind language, like we've been talking about, in a way that brings them into the conversation rather than points the finger at them, they're for it, you know? So I think if you're a parent watching this interview, it's about, okay, well, what is my kid into? What are they listening to on Spotify? What are they watching on YouTube? How can I find a common ground? You know, often I tell parents something simple like, let your kid play the music that they want to play in the car and listen to it. Oh, why do you like this song? What does this word mean to you? You know, what does I blew her back out mean? You know, like, no, but seriously, you listen to
the music, lyrics,
the lyrics, man. I work in sexual and family violence prevention, right? You know, those actions come from a set of ideas and beliefs that permeate our culture. And our culture is one which is always like bitches, hoes, sluts, I'd smash that, right? Like, I'd smash that pussy, blah, blah, blah. That's what we dance to. Literally, that's how we entertain ourselves. And then how do you learn about sex? Well, I watch 5 guys gangbang a girl while pulling her hair and slapping it on Pornhub for free. And then we suddenly get freaked out, and as we should be outraged about this, when, you know, story number 100 this month of like sexual violence comes across our Facebook newsfeed. Well, we feed people a steady diet of misogynistic lyrics, no education around consent that's meaningful, or it's an older person talking about consent in a very dry way, and then you go home and have all the psychological chemicals, neurological chemicals pop off as you masturbate to sexual aggression, which is what a lot of porn is. And we also live in a broader culture where men in particular are socialized to be sexually dominant and sexually promiscuous. Yo, what's up, bro? You get laid last night? You grew up with that sort of stuff? Because I did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's how the boys would talk. That's how you talk to the boys.
That's how the boys, you know, it's like, so if you're a parent, it's like you need to be a counter narrative to that culture, which is hard. And it's not saying, don't listen to this, don't ban this, because banning things doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, drugs are illegal. It's easy to get drugs. It's the same with all the stuff I'm talking about. It's about giving kids a lens and a critical understanding that, hey, it's out there. This is the world. Probably going to encounter porn. Might even use porn. You know, I'm not even saying you're a bad person for doing it, but you need to understand that porn doesn't role model consent. What's consent? Let's talk about consent. You know, and it's not just the absence of no. It's like, are they really into it? Are they enthusiastic? Like they really want to try that, and helping them get the language. And that's it. People need to learn to basically. I think this is why a lot of people like give me shit, is because I'm just like, yeah, I'm out here talking about jerking off and porno and like all this difficult stuff, because that's what we need to do. I'm not saying you need to glorify it and like
it needs
there
to
are
be
times and place,
about,
but you need to normalize. You need to normalize the stigma of mental health and depression and anxiety and not like glamorize it or make like a oh poor me or anything like that, but like we need to normalize those chats, because if parents can't talk to their kids about sex and relationships and mental health and coping with stress and coping with anxiety, they're going to find it on the internet, and the internet unfortunately is a really unhealthy place.
Yeah, it's not the best place to be learning about
all of this sort of stuff. It's a whole bunch of, I mean, it's a mixed bag. There's some awesome resources on the internet. If you're a parent, how do you if you can't have the chat, oh yo, son, daughter, here is this great website I saw, or you might like to check out this Instagram account. I have parents tag their kids in my Instagram account. It's dope, man.
Yeah.
And I'm mindful of that now. So like, yeah, it's my Instagram account and it's me, but I'm also mindful of what I'm putting out a bit more than I used to be, because if young people, and I don't have a huge following. I'm not like Israel or any of these superstars, Brad or any of the boys, but like, you know, I'm mindful that young people take their cues from media, and what am I putting out and what are young people absorbing? So I think parents have this role in helping steer their kids towards the right sources of information and teaching them about, hey, this is the world, this is how you're going to see it. but you can choose what to do with that. You know, if you have a steady diet of physical junk food, your body's going to get sick. Well, if you have a steady diet of mental junk food, your mind and your spirit and your belief systems are going to be poisoned to some degree, and that's going to play out in actions. You know.
Hey, Richie, I want to ask, like, you know, when you started doing all this public speaking and all that, you know, understand you've done some speaking to like huge crowds, big numbers and all that. And you were saying in the beginning it was a little bit hard. How did you overcome that? Like, how did you get used to it or comfortable with it? Like, what's...
Bro, just experience. I still do. Like,
sometimes you get the shivers.
Last, what was last year? It's 2020. 2019, my friends are this band Architects from the UK, and they took me on tour through Australia, and I was talking at their concerts to like 4,000 people, 4,500 people a night. I'd step out and be like, yo, what's up? What the fuck is up? We're having a good show. Let's talk about sexual harassment or whatever. And just like 3 or 4 minutes, I was nervous as. They weren't even like the best talks, you know? And then it just got easier over time. And so last year they were like, we want you to do the same thing to like 8,000 people at a music festival. And again, I'm nervous. It might not even be the best talk, but I just keep doing it to get better at it. And so I'm fine now. You know, I'm great. It's my job speaking to businesses or audiences at university. Like, just because I've done it, bro. Like,
you just got to go out and do it.
I just put myself out there. And you know what? Like I say, sometimes it's not even that good. You know, I've had talks that I've kind of flunked it. And like the information's good, but the delivery is poor. Might have been tired. I might have had other stuff in my mind or whatever, but I do it again anyway. And 90% of the time it's excellent, and some of the time it's not. But you don't just quit because you have a bad day. You learn from it and do it again. Yeah, when people started first paying me like money to be an educator and presenter and public speaker, I was like, yo, this is weird. Like, really? You know?
Different, yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm actually really good at what I do. And I've worked hard at it, just like fighting. You know, when you first go pro, people aren't offering you like superstar
big
money.
Bucks, yeah.
Well, it's Muay Thai, so no one ever offers you big bucks. But like, you know, like, well, boxing, you know, here's $300 for this difficult experience, and then climbs up. It's the same with speaking, really. Just put yourself out there, and for me, it's about being self-reflective. I'll always go away, get feedback, be capable of accepting negative feedback. Criticism that's constructive, because there are 2 sorts of criticism. And all the stuff we've been talking about is just destructive criticism. I'm going to be mean for the sake of being mean and bringing this person down a notch. How dare they thrive? But criticism that's like, oh, hey, well, if you did this or that, or like that didn't really relate on this thing, or for our audience, that sort of presentation could have been done a bit better. But here, you know, like that compliment sandwich.
Yeah, I think that's the one where people have got to be open to criticism as well. Like, you'll get both, but it's just for you to kind of know what's useful and what's not, what to absorb and what to throw away. Yeah.
And that's it, man. And you know, touching on social media, I'm happy for someone to critique what I'm saying on social media. I'm not happy for someone to abuse me on social media. If someone wants to say, oh, hey man, did you read this article, or did you think that, or why do you think this, or have you considered this different point of view? I might not agree, but I always appreciate how they've worded that. Yeah. And I'll try my best to digest it and be like, okay, maybe next time I will be like that.
It does make an actual difference.
It does make a difference.
How you deliver that message.
Yeah, but if you just want to call names or be rude or spread lies or whatever, I'm like, block.
Yeah.
Peace.
Yeah. So hey, you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. I recently saw on your Instagram, well, it's not very recently, but you were doing some work with the ladies from the Grace Foundation. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that, bro. So what do you do for them, and like, what is that about?
Yeah, so the Grace Foundation help people who have come out of incarceration, out of prison, and also in recovery from addictions or substance abuse. And they put physical training into part of their recovery program. And so they were looking for someone to help them out on Facebook, and I was like, oh, I'll donate some time. So I take them through Muay Thai once a week, or sometimes twice. There's another group of boys that I train too sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. They're you know, like a lot of people who end up in incarceration or live with substance abuse problems, a lot of them have had really hard starts to life, or lots of adverse experiences and different traumas, and that's contributed to, you know, how life's worked out. And so we try and use, well, I try and use, because they have lots of different training throughout their week with different people, but I try and use Thai boxing as a vehicle for conversation, you know, like chatting about all the sort of things that we've been talking about today, and offering alternatives to how perhaps some of the people might have historically responded, you know, with adverse circumstances or difficult emotions, or, you know, fluctuations in mental health. It's like, well, instead of picking up a bong or a pipe or hanging out with a crew that's going to get you back into trouble, why don't you go for a walk, or why don't you do some baking, or why don't you come hit the bag? And like just normalizing those sorts of conversations, and also having a non-judgmental space to just talk shit about life. And it's really rewarding. They're really, really awesome. A lot of the people I work with are still on bail, so they've got what they call a Rolex, the bracelet.
I think that's an international
It's
reference.
Yeah, when I first heard it, I cracked up. They're like, yo, my Rolex, I can't kick because of my Rolex. So everyone's getting good at throwing long knees, you know, because you can't.
Or kicking on just one leg.
Yeah, kicking on one leg. But you know, I was talking to one of the sisters, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that's happening. She's like, nah, my own fault. Everything I've done put me here. And to be fair, if I was thinking about it in sociological factors and the ways that I've been talking with you today, there are contributing factors that mean that some people are more likely to end up in the criminal justice system than others, you know? But at the same time, sister took personal responsibility for, I didn't need to do A, B, and C. And so it's cool to play a small part in helping those people get better. You know, I don't get paid for that time or anything. I just enjoy. It's like one of my favorite hours of the week. Like the banter and the chats are awesome, and I'm giving back to the community a little bit.
How have they found this? Like, you know, have they given you any feedback about this experience? They've you know, learning Muay Thai from you and training.
I think. Well, they keep coming back. It's been over a year now, right?
Wow.
So
you must be doing something right.
Well, yeah. I look, I'm not the world's best Muay Thai coach or anything like that, but I've trained guys to a pretty high level, you know, and I just start at the basics with them and just am encouraging and help them understand that it's progress, not perfection, and that all the growth is in the journey. And then, this is a transferable lesson that you can apply to everything in your life. Finding a job, reestablishing being a mum, all of that sort of stuff is just work. And I don't know, they seem to vibe with it, and the feedback's good, and they're like, can we buy one of your t-shirts? And it's like, you know, like, I'll be proud for you to represent, you know? Yeah. So, I guess they're into it.
Yeah, one of the, you know, you hear this a lot with a lot of people in like the personal training space and all that. And one of these guys, Tim is his name, back in Hamilton, on one of the gyms, we used to have a chat when we see each other in the gym. And he was telling me, you know, he's a very like down-to-earth guy, and you know, we talk about a whole lot of stuff. And there's just one time he was telling me, man, like, you know, I asked him about how's the job and like this, that, whatnot. And he says, look, man, like, you know, as much as I've spent years of study trying to teach people strength and conditioning and this, that, whatnot, just some of the times people who come to the gym, bro, they just want a space to come and talk, man. Like, just have a, you know, either guy or girl, whatever, you know, like they just want a time to have someone like dedicate that 30 minutes or that hour to have a chat with them and just talk whatever, you know.
That's exactly why I created Level Up, because I've been in gyms for nearly 30 years, and the conversations you have there are real conversations once you build trust and relationship and community. And given that a lot of the work I do is around stopping domestic violence and family violence, sexual violence, and and changing ideas about masculinity and what it means to be a man and what's healthy and what's not healthy. If a young man goes to a gym or a young woman and is like, this happened, and the bro's like, fuck it, let's just get on the piss and find some new bitches, it's not going to make society better over time, right? But
it's not going to help with anything.
But if the coach or the senior student or whatever is like, oh, that must really hurt, how do we talk about that? Do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to do some extra pads? Or if we find constructive ways to identify things and then constructive ways to deal with them in that space, that is a positive intervention. So that's the whole concept. It's what you said. People just want to come and talk sometimes. And it's how do we respond to what's told to us? Do we recreate the negative cycles and the negative transmission of destructive knowledge and ways of being in our culture? Or do we become a circuit breaker? And I want all the coaches and mentors in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in boxing gyms and Muay Thai gyms and MMA gyms and Jiu-Jitsu dojos to be circuit breakers. And because being a martial artist, as much as it's about being a great warrior and a great fighter, I truly think it's about being a great person. And if we can help people not be sexist and know how to talk about mental health and know how to change the dynamics about family violence and help boys be vulnerable and have guys who are amazing fighters talk about, yo, I cry too, man. Doesn't make me any less of a man. And that's going to change society over time.
Yeah, talking about that, not being afraid of being vulnerable or showing vulnerability is one of the things that I saw and I really appreciated was when Israel I think he was heading to one of his fights. It might have been, I think it might have been his title fight against Robert Whittaker, and they were in the hotel, and he was listening to some songs, and he was just like going through his head, whatever that he envisions, he actually shed some tears, and he actually told the guy, I think the guy asked him if it was all right to put in a clip, and he was like, yeah, use it, man, use it and put it in part of the whole clip, because he's not afraid, because you can be an emotional guy and still be a world-class elite level killer who you can still do that. It's okay.
That's the binary that a lot of media doesn't show. It's like you're either a quote-unquote real man, which is quite an unhealthy social idea that there is even a real man, or you're like this soft soy boy. Do you know? And actually, we want people to understand that being a boy and being a man is about a whole range of experiences and emotions. You can be a great dad and loving and look after your kids while your partner goes out partying, or you can stay at home and work. What if your partner wants to go and work? Whatever your economic situation is, and you're not a man anymore. But there is like a banter around oh, you wear an apron, or oh, did you leave your tampon in, bro? You're grumpy today. And we kind of put down guys who are sensitive and vulnerable to some degree. And it's like, how do you change that and create a social permission for dudes to time and place to be tough and stoic? And that's in sport. And then when we're off the field, or we're out of the cage, or we're out of the ring, we are everything. We're soft and we're loving and we're strong when we need to be, and we're soft when we need to be, because heaps of dudes just think they have to be strong all the time.
And tough all
the time. And that manifests in all the problems we've been talking about today. Violence against ourselves, violence against our partners, destructive, ways of feeling better.
It's you were talking about being a dad and all that, and understand you've had quite a switch in terms of how you look at a lot of things when you became a stepdad. How's that whole experience like for you? What did you learn, and how did you switch from being someone who most of the time usually just looks after yourself, but now you're looking after another human being, a kid.
It's still an adjustment, I'm still learning about that, because what I've learned about myself is that I'm actually quite autonomous emotionally. I put quite high walls up around myself in hindsight to kind of keep myself emotionally safe. So I've always been a bit emotionally I've always had amazing girlfriends or partners or whatever, but I guess when I'm looking back, the way I've built my life has meant that it's hard to get like super, super close. You know, like I'm always at the gym, I'm always working, I'm always studying, there's always a project on. Like I'm loving it, I'm kind and affectionate, and yeah, I love you, and you know, I'm here to listen to your problems and all this sort of stuff. But there's also like, you know, I'm out in the morning running by myself, and do you know what I mean? Like I keep an emotional distance, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so with a little boy in my life now, I've had to be less selfish, and I guess put some of those walls down, because routine has always kept me safe emotionally, and I feel a bit lost without routine. I feel a bit scared, a bit anxious, and
it feels different.
Yeah, and with a kid, you actually have to have a degree of flexibility, and I'm still working on it. And my partner, she would still say he needs to work on it a lot, but it's really great. Like it's made my life better. You know, like I've learned so much more about myself and about the human experience just in 4 years of helping raise a little boy. And it informs my work around masculinity and healthy masculinity, because when a little kid says, my friend didn't want to play with me because this toy was for girls, it really reinforces that we have so much further to go in our society. Because when kids are policing other kids' behavior about like what's okay and what's not okay, because this is what real men do and this is what real women do, shows you we have lots to change, because someone's parents have taught that kid that that's a girl's toy, when toys are pretty non-gendered, you know.
Usually, yeah.
And that's, yeah. So I don't know, like it's just made my life richer, and he's like also like he's just a cool person. You know, I think we can often talk about kids as like possessions or something that's a project, and like I just enjoy his company because he's got this he's incredibly intelligent. Like his mum's really smart, and his dad is really smart, and like so genetically, and heaps of people read to him, and he's just like a really smart kid. And I just love talking to him when he's up for it. You know, I love his little insights and his wild imagination, and I enjoy the innocence of him. And I think any parent out there can relate to that. And me being me, who can be a bit melancholic, I get sad when I hear the world in his language. You know, I worry about him losing some of that innocence as he moves through life. And it's like, how do I help him navigate the world in a way that lets him stay true to being who he authentically is? Because a lot of us, as we've talked about today, Ali, we don't want to get teased and harassed and bullied and shamed and forced to fit into a box of who we're not. So I think if I can give him some tools alongside, you know, because his dad's a good dad, and his stepmom and his real mom, like if we can, as a modern family, help him feel safe and comfortable being who he is, then I feel like that's time well spent on earth.
The interesting one, I recently heard someone say this, is like, you know, when you're a kid, you have like a wild imagination, you know, you have all these dreams and goals, and what actually kills all these dreams and goals and imagination is growing up. That's what kills it, you know, like if you have people telling you can't do stuff, you know, that's too big of a goal, dream, or like, oh, it's just a dream, you know, like it's crazy how. And I think if you talk to like some of the very successful people and the people who've achieved like great things, they kind of still have that wild imagination, you know, and they brought it along with them, and they didn't allow, like, you know, we talk about, like, for example, you know, just put an example like Elon Musk. That guy has a wild imagination. Like he, you know, there's no cap. Like he didn't listen to or follow what other people told him he could or couldn't do. He just went out and did it. He had an idea, you know, try to get some money.
I'm late to that. I'm quite a late bloomer in believing in myself and trying new things, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have a lot of self-esteem, like, for a lot of my life. It's still something sometimes I'll go out and talk to 8,000 people, and there's this huge imposter syndrome at me. But now I do it, whereas before I would have been like, I'd never have done that. When I was a fighter, people would be like, oh, you should fight this champion over here or this guy in Australia over here. A lot of the time I was like, nah, I don't think I could beat him. And my friends would be like, bro, like, you could definitely beat him.
That's self-confidence.
But it was just, and that's the difference between, I used to train Brad, like I said earlier. That dude always thought he could beat anyone. And same with Israel, and same with those elite level dudes. And if you take that sort of like champion mindset and apply it to all areas of your life, then I think it sounds corny, but as they say, like, aim for the moon, and if you miss, you're still going to reach the stars, right? And so now I'm older and I've built myself up internally a bit more. I'm trying to be more like that. People are like, yo, do this. And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know? and good things come from that.
Exactly, man. Talking about Brad, man. Brad's fighting tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yes. What is your thoughts, or what is your prediction for this fight?
I've actually not watched his opponent fight, so it's not like a fully informed decision, but I hear he's a good wrestler with reasonable stand-up. But look, knowing Brad, his stand-up's exceptional, his conditioning will be exceptional, his wrestling has become really, really strong. He would have been working, sounds corny.
Hard.
Yeah, he would have been working harder than anyone.
That guy works hard.
Like he works too hard to the point like he'll get injuries and stuff, And he's got an indomitable spirit. Like he is one of those dudes who will go out on a shield every time. Like there's no quitting them. And he's pretty phenomenal that way. And I hear he's like the semi-main event now.
Yes, he's the
Yeah, and so that's just going to motivate him. He's just had a child, so I think that's going to be another source of motivation.
That father kind of motivation.
Yeah,
is
man.
Different.
Like Kai.
Look at like Kai.
Kai said, like, I'm feeding my family.
That's no joke.
So look, everyone in the UFC is fucking good. That's why they're in the UFC. It's not going to be a walk in the park, but I believe in Brad and the team at CKB, and that they will have an intelligent game plan that Brad's physically capable of executing. So I'm biased.
Of course, we will be. Of course, we will be biased. Yeah, and I think so. That's Brad's tomorrow, and by this time the video comes out, Brad would have already fought. But yeah, and then the week after will be Shane and Alex as well.
Yeah, Volkanovski.
Yeah, Alex is going to be fighting. So that's three fights in 2 weeks.
It's amazing what City Kickboxing's done. Like I've watched Doug and Eugene grow that gym from a distance for, I don't know, since its inception. And it truly trips me out how they've become literally the number one biggest
gym in the
world. Most successful MMA gym in the world, right? At the moment. It's ranked number one. Yeah. And I also love how the culture of that gym, everyone there doesn't have a superstar mentality. Everyone, literally like world famous people. Yeah. Like, as you talk about people, I'm like, yo, Drake knows who you are. I'm like,
yeah, this is what was interesting. John Vake actually said this in the podcast that I did with him. Israel's almost as famous as, or is as famous as Chris Brown these days.
Yeah, and he's not abused any woman. Yeah, to get there.
Exactly.
So that's it's nuts, and everyone's still super chill. Doug and Eugene will still talk to those guys like they're beginners,
like everybody else.
It's like everyone else, and I think that's really awesome. I think that's important,
and it works the other way around as well, because these boys speak to everybody. Like normal as well.
That's it, man. And I think as a superstar, I must imagine it could really go to your head. Like even if
you don't keep it in check.
If you don't keep some groundedness, it'll mess up your ego, and you could become like pretty lost in that. And you see that all the time, right? You see like Hollywood celebrities wilding out, destroying their lives and being crazy, and celebrity can do that to you. And social media, as I talked about earlier, oh my God, it must exacerbate it like no end.
And that's the interesting one about that is like nobody really teaches you how to navigate that. Like, that's why like, some people do really well if they have like really good values even before that. But if you don't, and then you don't keep that in check, you don't have good people around you to kind of keep you in check as well. Like you'd go,
yeah, here's some more cocaine. Here's some more people I can sleep with that slid into my DMs, and here's all this external validation, and here's all this fast living, and like but you got to be careful because all that stuff will go as soon as it comes, and then who are you really?
Hey you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video.
I think what makes the gym successful is that everyone stays really grounded, like everyone stays humble. Because I've been around successful people through like music and through sport most of my life, and the ones who go off the rails often don't have people who keep them in check or look out for them, and they get caught up in all the hype and the drugs and the glamour and the easy relationships, and then suddenly time passes and they're not the number one spot anymore, and then who are they?
Yeah, and the one I think like that's people get caught up with is like when you get that sudden like spurt in that growth, the following, the numbers, maybe even the money or stuff like that. It's why it's very important to have a good circle of people around you, because a lot of sharks are gonna start to come in. Everybody wants a bite, want a piece of the cake, or they want the attention, they want the fame, they want that fast track, and they want to jump on board now. And you've got to be careful because these people might not have your best interests, and
dude, I would kind of hate it. For some reason, it's like, do you really like me, or are you just here because I'm the man now? Like it would be hard. There would definitely be frenemies and false friends and people trying to, use you. And hey, bro, got any money? Like,
did you feel that was the kind of the thing that it's like in the media industry? Because I understand you spent a bit of time when you were in radio. Was it like that?
I was never in radio like that, bro. I did an alternative radio at a small station. That was very cool with hipsters. It was like a trendy station, but it wasn't a big
like mainstream.
It wasn't a big mainstream station. Yeah, I wasn't like at MediaWorks or anything.
But how about like, okay, maybe I'll say like now, for example, like you have a decent following, people look up to you and all that. Like, do you think it's like that? Like people,
for me,
yeah.
Are you asking me? I don't think. I mean, I get people getting in touch, like, "Hey, man, could I have coffee with you?" Like people I've never met. I want to run an idea by you, and they might think that I can help their career, perhaps by sharing an idea. But by and large, I mean, like, I'm not rich, and I'm not internationally famous, or I'm mindful that I'm a small fish in a medium-sized pond, and so I don't really ever feel that anyone's endeavored to leapfrog off me to get to somewhere where they want to be, at least in a career sense. I've definitely had people have let me down and hurt my feelings and turned out to be not who I thought they were. But by and large, I feel I'm pretty lucky that I have a real crew of good humans around me, and there'll be, they're my ride or dies.
That's true, man. That's true. And
then to be fair, like I did get caught up for myself. Like I'm like, oh, yo, this kind of famous person wants to hang out with me, and then you're like, am I hanging out with them just because they're famous? Do you know what I mean? And like, do I actually even like them? Like you hang out with someone because they're a celebrity or whatever, and then you have to look at yourself. Like, oh, everyone wants to get a photo with a famous dude, right? And if that person's in your social circle, I guess some people might want to validate themselves by who they're around. But ultimately, we have to love ourselves and like ourselves and think we're worthy in and of ourselves, irrespective of how famous our friends are, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I guess there were moments when I was younger where I enjoyed knowing people who were of note, And now I'm just like, I like people who are people, whether they're famous or they're not.
Talk a little bit about your Level Up coaching program. So we touched a little bit on it, but for those who don't know what it is, could you give us like like give an explanation on what that program is? And
so I do a bunch of work with Ministry of Social Development. It's Not Okay campaign, which is their anti-domestic violence campaign. And a couple of years back, I had this idea, given that I'm always in the gym, and because of the stuff I talk about on social media, I get friends, I get guys I'm acquainted with, I get complete strangers. If I'm at Les Mills or something lifting some weights, it's kind of like, hey man, I saw you on TV talking about mental health, or can I ask you about porn? And I was just like, okay, cool, yeah, it's cool to have those conversations. I'm like, well, if it works for me, and I do have, I guess, expert knowledge in those spaces, how do I help other personal trainers, coaches, elite level students, people that other people look up to maybe, and to ask for advice? How do I give them some good knowledge so that when they're in their community, in their gym or whatever it might be, so they can answer those questions constructively and give out good answers and good advice instead of, as we said earlier, bad advice. So yeah, I hit up the ministry, applied for some funding. We did one 2 years ago, and it was cool. I had like Eugene Behrman, Brad run a striking thing. I spoke about, masculinity. My bro Peter Thorburn talked about mental health and alcohol and drugs. We had David Neathy speak, and I'm forgetting one person. I'm sorry. It'll come to me. I think that's right.
I think that was.
Maybe that's right, yeah. And then this year, we, obviously last year was COVID, and this year we had a really great one. Like I like this one better than the first one. I think it went a lot smoother, given the first one was the first one.
It was a trial.
Yeah, and then we got another one May the 2nd down in Christchurch.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm real pumped. I'm actually flying down there on Thursday to look at different venues.
Nice.
So we got.
Have you started selling tickets for that one?
No, not yet, but they will be on sale soon. So
stay tuned, fellas.
Stay tuned, fam. So we got Carl Webber, who's an OG of combat sports in New Zealand, Coach Hostile. I got Dan Hooker. I've got Wayne Vega, and then myself, Peter Thorburn, and Matteo Brown, who's behind She Is Not Your Rehab. I don't know if you know
yes. We've that one was it went viral at some point.
Yeah, the Rock one. You seen that one?
Yeah, the Rock one.
Yeah.
Dear
Mr. Rock. Yeah, their son Angelo. Yeah,
that's cool, man.
So I know Matteo for a couple of years now. Him and his wife Sarah do amazing work around domestic violence prevention. Because Matteo tells his story, and it's a very it's a tough story, man. He went through a lot as a child, and so did his mother at the hands of his father. And he's an amazing man, and his wife Sarah is an amazing woman, and they've turned all of that hurt into something positive, and they've created this like global movement, right? Like
that's so powerful, man.
Yeah, they got like hundreds of thousands of followers. I don't know, like on the gram, and they're just putting out all these positive messages about healing and dealing with your trauma and building healthy, non-violent relationships, and everyone takes their own ownership. It's epic. Anyway, he'll be speaking at the Christchurch one.
Man, that's so cool.
So we're pairing it up. So it'll be in the morning, it'll be Peter Thorburn, who's amazing. You saw him speak, right?
Yeah.
He's a great speaker, and he's got mad knowledge, super educated, but he comes from this crazy background of like prison and yada, yada, yada. So we'll do Peter and Carl in the morning, I think, and then myself and Wayne, and then Dan and Matteo in the afternoon, So it's 2, 2, and 2, like physical, lecture, physical, It's not a lecture.
You cover like a few aspects of everything.
Yeah, so I'm just figuring out the venue, and then we'll have tickets on sale. And yeah, I'm excited about it. Be a good day, like start at 8, finish at 5. I think it'll be a bit longer than the last one. Yeah. But I believe it's worth it, and I don't.
It's like a full day program. And honestly, man, just to give a feedback, because I was there at that program. I was helping you do some stuff. But what's really cool, I want to share with people is this. If you guys like spend money on a whole lot of things, buying this, that, whatnot, this is like a priceless experience. Like you spend the money for a day of doing all this cool stuff, and I can guarantee you this type of thing is not going to come around very often. And I want to encourage anybody who's like watching or who finds out about this, and I'll cut this clip and I'll put this as a separate clip. If you're interested in like martial arts, or just like having a positive mindset and how to navigate certain things, and if you just want to be a better person, man, and just improve your game on different levels. You know, that's what the whole program, Level Up, is the name of it. You know, like, I think people should go for it and experience it. And you know, we had a chat post that second workshop seminar workshop, I think that's the right
workshop
word. Workshop that you did. And I was asking about the number of people, and I was quite surprised, because you were I was like, man, I'm pretty sure there's a lot more people who want to get on this, but you actually had a cap on the numbers, because you wanted to make it more about quality instead of quantity. And I really respected that. You know, like, usually you think when people do this sort of stuff, they want like huge numbers, but it's so cool that you want to keep the numbers slightly smaller, maybe for the first few ones, or so that people can have an experience that they can keep with them, man.
That's it, man. It's like, yo, you're getting to train with. We had Kai Cutter France at the last one. It's like, not every day you get to train with Kai France,
Exactly,
or Dan Hucker, or Brad Dow, or learn from Wayne, or you know. And well, you know, I think a lot of guys wouldn't necessarily come to a talk about masculinity or family violence, right? Excuse me. But when you embed that with all the other stuff, it becomes more digestible. So that's the whole idea. And every bro there is like, yo, I never thought about it like that, but it's amazing. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Ginger beer will help.
Yeah. Ginger beer's good, man.
And so we do keep the numbers small, because it's not about numbers. It's about depth of engagement, you know? Yeah.
You want people to have a fair share to participate in the stuff, and have them like sort of the attention, you know, given to them. I mean, that's I respect that, man. And I hope you find a good venue for the one in
thanks, man.
in Christchurch. And
I just emailed somewhere that Wayne recommended, so we'll get there, man.
and Wayne is he's a owner of South Island Liga.
That's right.
And I've had Lolo, who talked about Wayne previously before as well. So cool. And Wayne actually came down to that second workshop.
I was amazed, because I didn't know who was coming. He was like, bro, I happened to be in Auckland, just turned up, and I wanted to come. And he was like glowing with praise. He was like, Richie, I didn't know really what to expect. Like, it was amazing. You got to come do that. And I'm like, cool, we'll bring it to Christchurch, fam. Because Christchurch's got a really strong fight community.
It does.
And I know Mateo and She's Not Your Rehab are based down there as well. So bring it all together.
What a perfect opportunity. Right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes, do you not, sometimes it's weird how things work, you know, or how they come about. Like, when when you sit down and think about it, like, man, I didn't expect it. Like, you know, it's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it is. I feel like I'm at this interesting time in my life where, like, all the things I care about and know about, like, have kind of coalesced and just come together. It's interesting coming together. And people say, like, trust in the universe, and it seems like a corny Instagram sort of meme, but like, it's a thing, man.
It is, man. And you know how people always like push about, you know, when you do good things come to you, and things just work. You know, like, it's corny, like it is, but like that's just the truth. You know, when you push out like positive energy, you know, people come towards you as well. The positive people come towards you, and
100%.
It just works out. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. There's a law of attraction. There is, you know, if I just spent my time with negative people doing negative things are going to come back to me. And I can't explain that academically, but it's true of my lived experience, and it's true of yours, and pretty much anyone watching this, right?
Yeah.
Like, we are the end result of who we spend the most time with and what we spend the most time doing. And you hear people who are feeling sorry for themselves, and it's bad thing after bad thing, and it's like, well, what are you doing about it? Because I can't change it. I'm really glad you're telling me about it. I am. I want you to open up, but I can't fix it for you. I can give you some advice, but you have to act on the advice.
Yeah. Anyway, we've come to the section now. Wise words from the wise man, Mr. Richie. If you have any words for the people watching, listening, what advice would you give them?
Oh, wow. No pressure, bro.
That's just like...
Yeah, I guess if you're watching this and you're looking for some wisdom, I'd say put yourself in uncomfortable situations, because you'll grow from them, whether you're successful or not in whatever it is that you're achieving. If you look for the lessons, as we talked about today, like, if you look for the lessons in everything, even if it's a quote unquote loss, it's not a loss. It's not a waste of time. If your relationship ends and you didn't want it to end, why did it end? What is it about you? What is it about the sort of person that you always gravitate towards, and how do you unpack that? How do you learn how to communicate better? How do you learn to know your triggers better? How do you know how to avoid certain sorts of relationships better? If you keep losing your fights, well, what is your diet wrong? Are you not sleeping enough? Are you like overdoing your conditioning? Are you underdoing your conditioning? If you aren't in a job that you like, well, okay, cool. At least you're paying the rent. You don't have to love it right now. What is it that you want to do? How do you go back to study? How do you upskill yourself? Like, I guess what I'm saying is like, never settle is what I'm saying. Never settle. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And look, we're not all going to be superstars and rocket scientists and world famous, but we can all be happy. And we actually play a big role in how happy we are.
Man, wow. You couldn't have said it any better, Richie. That was some good advice, man. I think a lot of people could use, as what you said, not being comfortable. Because, yeah, I think that's the one as well. Like, I've been in situations where I felt that, one of the big reasons I moved over to Oakland was I felt I was getting really comfortable at the old place that I was at, and there was no real growth. I just didn't, and one of my big things that I have, my mottos in life, right, is if there is ever a day where I feel like I'm dragging myself to work or I'm not interested anymore, I'm just gonna leave.
Good for you, that's
Bro.
good.
And that was what I mean. I had to make sure I set myself up for something else as well, but that's what I did, man. I just felt like, it was getting too comfortable.
Yeah, people hear that and they're like, oh, well, I can't just quit because I've got bills to pay. We're like, well, don't do it today.
Yeah.
But like, build a plan. Build a plan on how you can transition from one thing to the other.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
You can't just jump just like that. I mean, there are
sometimes, but
yeah,
like,
sometimes you have to really, like, you can't blame people. Like, sometimes they really have to. Might be some really extreme conditions.
Once I quit my job on Monday to chase a girl to Mexico on Wednesday. And then I ended up being with that girl for like 10 years. And it was dope. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like,
Oh, that's pretty bold move.
I was really in love. I was broke with this money, quit this job, go over there. I mean, we're not together now, but like good things come when you sometimes take a leap of faith, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, faith. I think that's a big one.
I have a tattoo it. Have faith, trust in things. You can't always put like a rational reason to it. And I'm a very rational, like, what's the science behind that? Like, what's the empirical? Because, that's important to me. Because otherwise people believe like 5G caused coronavirus or like QAnon or some shit. Like, I'm like, there's no facts behind that.
Yeah, exactly, man.
But at the same time, like we've said, intuition is a thing. Sometimes you do need to listen to a gut. And sometimes we need to accept that we're emotional beings as much as logic's important.
Also, you jump back about the stuff about saying finding your space for a gym. Where are you at right now?
Now, I'm really appreciative to Tony Angelov at Liga. He lets me PT and run a few classes at City Liga. I got a good friend called Amin Afsali who runs a nice boxing studio in the city, and I do a little bit of PTing out of there.
Oh, cool.
But I'm mainly at Liga, just on Dominion Road there, and I train a few of my, like a little team in the afternoons while I look for my own space. Like a thing came up like 2 years ago today on Facebook, and it was like me and like 20 students, and I was like, fuck, I kind of miss having my own space. But that said, Liga is my family. I got a huge Liga on my back. I've been at Liga since 1997.
That's a while.
And I'm really grateful to be there, and I love it. It's just, I guess from like a business perspective, and we all have our own different ways of teaching, and like I want to grow it, you know what I mean? So I'm looking for a new spot. But if I never find it, then I'm happy to just help out at Liga and look after a few boys. But I'm hopeful that I can find.
I wish you the best for finding a space, for having to build your own community. And,
that's it.
It's different. Like, I get what you mean. Like, it's different to have your own space and your own community, and like.
I said, I've always subleased, right? Like the other gyms, and I rent some space off them, whatever. But then year before last, I think it was 2019, 2020. I my friend had a CrossFit style gym, and they had a whole basement. It was like 70 square meters, and he's like, you can have it. And like it became basically just a Muay Thai gym. And I was like, yo, I could actually do this. I could actually have my own gym with some structure in place. And it was cool, and it grew by word of mouth, and I trained a few amateurs, and more importantly, I started training kids, and I started having like a whole gym structure, like 330, 430, 530, 630. And I also work with lots of youth at risk and stuff, and it felt really cool, So I'm in this hunt for an affordable lease that's not too far removed from the city fringe, It's hard though, property market's hard, but I'm optimistic something will come up.
With prices going up and all that.
That's
but
nuts, man.
Hopefully you can find something, man. It'll be cool. I'll be
Thanks,
watching
bro.
out for that. And if you do actually open or whatever, you have an event, like I'll be there, man.
Thank you, bro.
I have to share the message and all that as well. It'll be awesome. So other than those stuff, anything in the works, Richie? Any other stuff?
We got that next level up May 2nd down in Christchurch. What else am I doing? Just busy with my speaking. I'm speaking at a bunch of schools. I work with this program called Blueprints. It's like young men who are in sort of criminal justice. Like they haven't gone to jail, but they could end up there. So I've got some speaking events with them. I got my boy Regan Nickel. He's an amateur. He's only had 3 fights, but working with him, he's got some ability. He's fighting on Art of War. I've got a boy called Alex Sorensen. Hopefully I'm trying to get matched for that as well. Just help where I can. Yeah, looking forward to the world opening up. I'm hopeful that Melbourne is going to be open for business soon, and we get that Australia bubble, because I've been offered some speaking work over there.
Oh, that'd be cool, man.
Yeah, and that band I was telling you about, actually, they were like, yo, we just put out a new album, we'll come back to Australia, hopefully, because they're based in England.
In UK, yeah.
And they're like, we want to take you on tour again, so...
Man, that'd be so cool.
That'd be fun, yeah. So I guess I'm trying to do the same, but better and bigger.
Man, that's so cool. Anyway, Richie, we've gone on for quite a while. I don't want to take up.
Sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
I don't want to take up any more of your time. But hey, Richie, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy weekend, coming down here, talking with us, and sharing the message, positive messages. The advice you're giving, the lessons, and man, I think a lot of people are really going to benefit from this. And I'm very sure, bro, this is not going to be the last we're going to be doing this. I'm sure we're going to be doing it in the future. And yeah, man. I definitely 100% support what you're doing, and yeah, man, looking forward for you to do big and great things, man.
Thank you,
anyway,
bro.
Richie, thank you very much for that.
I appreciate it.
All right, guys, if you've stayed for us all the way, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you on the next one.